So my name is Georg Lenz. I chair the Department of Hematology, Oncology and Pneumonology at the University Clinic in Münster, Germany. And I also chair the German Lymphoma Alliance, which is the German lymphoma study group for the treatment of lymphoma patients. That's a very good question. So the design of the trial was that Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP was compared to R-CHOP alone in high-risk patients with different aggressive lymphoma subtypes. And as you said, the PFS was met, and when we looked at different subtypes and determined, at least in a fraction of patients, which subtype was prevalent, we found that a benefit for Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP was present in ABC, GCB, and also in unclassifiable DLBCLs. However, I have to say this work is ongoing, but at this stage it really looks like that this combination works across molecular subtypes. So event-free survival, very similar to progression-free survival, was significantly better in patients treated with Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP. Overall survival, this was an interim analysis, so we'll do further analyses on overall survival with more follow-up. There was a trend towards better overall survival, approximately 4% increase after 2 years for patients that have been treated with Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP. However, we need more follow-up. Regarding overall response, there was a 4% increase in overall response rate for Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP treated patient compared to R-CHOP alone. However, the complete metabolic response rate was similar, or it was the same. So the number of PR patients increased. So we'll have to look into that, if that at least in part explains the better progression-free survival. However, this work is ongoing. Safety is absolutely important. So we saw in general that severe side effects were more frequent in Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP treated patients. And also fatal events were slightly higher in Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP treated patients. And this is most likely, at least, or explained by more infections. There were more sepsis, there were more pneumonia, and importantly, because the study was performed during the COVID pandemic, we saw more COVID death. However, when you look at overall death, it was higher in the R-CHOP arm because of the higher efficacy of Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP. I absolutely think that this is, let's assume it gets approved in Europe and the US, it's absolutely a novel option for physicians to treat their patients if these patients have a high-risk profile. So I think that's a very valid option because there's an 8.2 after 2 years PFS advantage. This is meaningful, and it seems, as I said, to work across subtypes. So definitely a novel option for physicians to treat their patients. So, I mean, there are many analyses that we're currently doing. We're looking at MRD. Do we maybe induce deeper responses by using Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP compared to R-CHOP alone? I think that's a very important aspect. I think we have to look further into safety. We know it's infections and COVID death, but we have to look, was that observed in certain areas of the world? Because that was an internationally conducted trial. And so there are many questions that are still open. But I think it's really, it's a significant finding, but it's also a clinically meaningful finding that we improve PFS by using Tafasitamab-Lenalidomide-R-CHOP. Well, I think, as I said, it's an important study. It's again after the POLARIX study, after we had essentially 20 years of negative studies in diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, the second trial that shows now a PFS benefit. I think that's absolutely important. I think we need a little bit more detailed granularity on the data to really decide eventually which patient is suitable for which approach. And also, I have to say, there are currently several phase 3 trials ongoing and have been fully recruited. For example, adding a bispecific to R-CHOP or Pola R-CHIP. These studies are fully recruited, so we're awaiting these results. And I think the frontMIND study really adds to our arsenal how we can treat patients with high-risk aggressive lymphomas.